The way home was eternal. It was a beautiful day, and the light shone through the branches of the trees. A pleasant-looking lady was driving. She had watery green eyes. Her facial expression was somber and sad, though she forced a smile. From time to time, she looked back in the rearview mirror. Her son was in the back seat. The boy looked defeated. He had messy brown hair and pale skin. His dark eyes looked vacant. He was wearing the white t-shirt and pants he had been given at the hospital. He had cuts all over his face, near his mouth, and his right arm was bandaged from wrist to shoulder, shattered when he broke the glass. Although his injuries looked painful, he couldn't feel anything at all. He grew up with a rare disease that caused him to be completely insensitive towards pain. He could have lost his arm and still not feel a thing. In addition, he also had another disorder, Tourette's syndrome, which caused him uncontrollable tics. He used to move his neck and shake from time to time. The children teased him and called him Ticci Toby, laughing uproariously. That is why he left school and was educated at home. Toby Rogers is this boy's real name. When the car jumped a small pothole, everything came back to his mind. The accident. He couldn't stop thinking about his older sister. Toby had been the lucky one. He saw glass everywhere again. Blood, explosions. Why did it have to be her? Everything went blank for a moment. After a few hours, they arrived home. It was an old neighborhood with picturesque houses. The cars stopped in front of a small blue house. There was an old red car parked. It was his father's. Toby was filled with rage and frustration. He never behaved like a real father. Before getting out of the car, he asked his mother, "Why are we here?" "He's your father, Toby. He's here because he wants to see you," his mother replied in a monotone voice. "He didn't drive to the hospital to see Lyra before she died. He was drunk. He couldn't drive." They got out of the car and his father stood there. The mother ignored him and put her arm around Toby's shoulders as they walked towards the house. And how about a welcome hug? The woman ignored her husband's unpleasant words and continued walking. "Do you want to go to your room to rest? I'll pick you up when dinner's ready," she told Toby. Toby's room was small, with only a bed, a cupboard, and a window. The walls were adorned with old family photos, when they were still a family, before his father became an abusive alcoholic. They had had a bad time. His mother and sister were the ones who had had the worst time. After all, he couldn't feel pain. He took off the bandage from his arm and put it on properly. He was used to falling off because of tics and repositioning his bones. He went down to dinner. His father was still in the house. He talked to his mother. "When is he going to leave?" "I'm not sure, honey," she answered with a kind tone. They dined in silence, but Toby couldn't eat anything. He went back up to his room. He couldn't fall asleep and kept tossing and turning in his bed. He heard the screeching of the tires again and the screams of his sister. He cried inconsolably with the pillow in his face so that his mother wouldn't hear him. A little recovered, he stood up and walked to the window. He looked outside, trying to calm down. He rubbed his eyes and looked at the trees. There was something standing there. He didn't know exactly what it was, but he couldn't take his eyes off that thing. It had no features, no eyes, no mouth, and no nose, and its arms were very long. He noticed a buzzing that grew louder and more intense. Suddenly, everything went black. Toby woke up in his bed the next morning. He felt different. He wasn't tired at all. In his mind, everything flowed differently. Everything changed when he tried to get up. He was very dizzy. He staggered towards the door and went down. His parents were in the living room, his mother cleaning and his father watching television on the sofa. The scene was repeated for several days. Toby wasn't feeling well and he hardly left his room. He couldn't bear that his father was still in the house and that his mother didn't kick him out. He spent his nights looking out the window trying to repeat the moment with the strange creature. He was more nervous than usual. His tics were getting worse and he kept biting his nails. One day it happened and he almost lost his fingers. He wouldn't have noticed if he hadn't noticed how the blood was staining his pants. At that moment, his mother came through the door. Frightened, she ran for a bandage and vowed never to leave him alone again. She went out of her way to indulge, but Toby was increasingly reluctant to human contact. He began to lose his memories and have hallucinations. The worried mother decided to take him to a specialist. Dr. Oliver received them. She was young, had blonde hair, and was wearing a polka dot dress. She was holding a notebook and a pen. "Toby?" she asked with a smile. Toby looked at her and nodded. "Nice to meet you, Toby." The doctor asked a few simple questions. "How old are you, Toby?" 17. "What's your full name?" "Toby Aaron Rogers." "When is your birthday?" "April 28th. "How many members are there in the family?" Toby paused for a minute. "My mother, my father, my sister." "I heard about your sister. I'm so sorry. Do you remember anything about the accident, Toby? Toby looked away from her. His mind went blank for a moment. He felt a chill run down his spine. He couldn't speak more. He fainted. He woke up in the hospital bed. The buzzing was back. He turned his face, but the faceless character wasn't found. It was his dead sister. Her eyes were blank, her skin pale, and a piece of her jaw hung out. Blood dripped down her face. Toby didn't understand anything. He couldn't stop looking at her. He looked closer and met the tall figure again. Behind were rows of children and teenagers, their eyes completely black. Toby tried to scream, tried to escape, but everything went dark. He had passed out again. He woke up. It had only been a dream. His head was spinning nonstop. Anger was growing in him. He remembered his sister and his father. The hatred was getting stronger. He had to do something. Was he going crazy? He got up, put the sweatshirt on top, and went out the door of the room. He thought he saw him walking down the hall. He began to walk silently behind his father. His neck wouldn't stop shaking. He noticed that there was a fire safety chart hanging on the wall. He broke the glass with his bandaged hand and felt nothing. He grabbed the axe and the mask, put it on. There was also some orange smoke goggles. He saw himself in the reflection of a window. He was perfect. He began to laugh out loud, almost gasping. His father turned around, but without time to react. Toby had the axe raised. The father cried out for the last time. Blood began to spill and splatter everywhere. The hospital alarm sounded. Toby felt his vision blur, the ringing in his ears nonstop. In the distance, he saw again the dark, imposing figure. He seemed to be dressed in a dark black suit, and his face was completely blank. He had to follow him. That's how Toby Rogers died, and Ticci Toby was born. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you on the next episode.